Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Pick Six podcast. And Drake, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, DPZ, it's the 4th of July holiday weekend. Hopefully everybody's having a safe and fun 4th. When after this drops, it'll be after the 4th. So hopefully no fireworks incidents or, things like that. So hopefully everybody's having a happy, fun and safe 4th of July long holiday weekend. It's kind of great how it falls on a Thursday, and hopefully most people are off Thursday and Friday, a long weekend. I was talking to somebody yesterday about how it kind of stinks because Christmas falls on a Wednesday this year. You kind of look ahead to holidays, and it's just kind of like it's that weird thing of, do you take the whole week off? Do you take off before? Do you take off after? Mm-hmm. What do you do? So, but these holidays that fall on Thursdays are always nice.
No, it is definitely nice. I hope everybody has a fun weekend, a good, safe weekend. It's going to be hot over here, which we're not used to hot heat. Well, we're getting used to it the past few years, but usually in the Pacific Northwest, it's cold and rainy all the time. So when the sun comes out, we kind of freak out. We don't know what to do. And when it gets hot, we don't know what to do either. Sports cards, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about, the hot topics in sports cards, right? And that's what we're here for. But before we get into that, right, 4th of July, I was looking through my collection. These aren't necessarily new cards, but I figured I would show off some American-themed type cards. I don't have any red, white, and blue prisms, unfortunately, but I do have some things I'll show off. So the first one's a wrestling card. And when you think of American, right, you think of the real American, which is Hulk Hogan. This is Hulk Hogan, Topps Transcendent WWE from 2020, which I really hope is coming back. This is out of 25. And so this is considered the base version of the card. There's an out of 15 that's green. There's an out of 10 that's purple, out of 5 that's blue. And then it's kind of like a reddish color 1 of 1. But this is, for whatever reason, this number out of 25, he decided to put the Runnin' Wild Brother inscription on it. And so this is the only known copy that has an inscription of it. You'd think, the 1 of 1, cool. He put an inscription or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was only in the Transcendent product in 2020. And so he threw that inscription on there. And I was told by someone that he posted a picture of it on social media, like holding the card next to him or whatever. I've looked everywhere trying to find it, and I cannot find that picture. But if I could find that picture, that'd be really, really cool. So
very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Cool card.
Yeah, that's the first thing. So the next thing is a Razorback. Everybody knows my Razorback stuff behind me. You may remember Corliss Williamson, the Big Nasty.
Yeah, I remember him.
2008 press pass. These are numbered, they had weird numberings back then. This is 165 out of 165, PSA 10, with the Big Nasty inscription, things like that. So this was actually when I returned to the hobby back in late 2019. This is one of the first cards that I picked up. I remember going to eBay and searching for Arkansas Razorbacks cards and all that. And I saw that and I was like, man, that's a really cool card. It's the on-card autograph. It's got the Big Nasty inscription. Talks about that, and it was from a nostalgia standpoint. I mean, he's when you look at him from a historical standpoint, he's not one that's talked about among the greats, but he's one of the few players to have won an AAU championship, an NCAA championship with Arkansas, and then he won an NBA championship with the Detroit Pistons. And he was also the 6th man of the year back in, I think, 2002 with the Sacramento Kings. So I think he had a 12-year career in the NBA. I was actually doing a little research before we hopped on just to kind of refresh myself. And he's currently one of the assistant coaches with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And so, he's been around for a long time. And the Big Nasty was definitely, he was a force in the paint back in his day.
Definitely. You don't hear that name very often anymore. So
no, you don't.
I'm going to bring that back up.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of a blast from the past, so to speak. And then finally, finish up with another wrestling card, The Rock. So this is the Global Icons insert set with the American flag in the background. I think it's just a really cool looking card. I got this from a guy, Raw, graded it, came back a 10, which I thought was cool. But, lots of people talk about, is The Rock going to run for president or whatever? And this kind of has that presidential look to it as well. So Yeah, pretty neat card. I like the, I like that set. They do that for each of the wrestlers, and some wrestlers come from different countries. So like Bret Hart came from Canada, and so his has the Canadian flag behind it and that whole sort of thing. So
Cool.
Anyway, all right. So should we move on to burning hobby topics, hobby
move
questions?
On to some topics. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Enough about cards, right? Let's go to topics.
Well, topics about cards.
No, exactly. So the first one, actually, I was talking to a guy I know today, and I'm sure this comes up a lot. So credit to this topic from a friend of the show. His name is Adam Wheeler, and he was opening up some boxes of Bowman baseball cards, and he pulled a card of a guy, and his name escapes me, but he's like the number 1 or number 2 prospect in the Yankees organization right now. And he's like, hey, Drake, this card is like $125 card raw. I could pay to get it graded. If it comes back a 10, I could maybe sell it for like $225. He said, I have no attachment to this player. What do you think I should do? So what would you do, DPZ, in that case?
I think it all depends on what card it is. With Bowman Chrome, especially with Bowman Chromes, has to be a Bowman first. The true colors are the ones that matter. So your yellows, your reds, your orange, your blue, your gold refractor. PSA 10 is going to be pretty important. Autograph's going to have to be good as well. If you're going to grade the autograph, be careful. Sometimes the ones that would get a BGS 9510 don't translate over to a PSA 1010 auto 10. But those are the things you're going to want to look for. Obviously, a prospect that has merit, that is hot, a top 100 prospect usually. I would say a top 10 prospect in the top 100 are usually the ones you're going to want to look at. I'd say stay away from pitchers and catchers, but Paul Skeens has done really well. He's a really good pitcher, but I think that those kind of drop off after time. Clayton Kershaw and Justin Verlander are like Hall of Fame caliber pitchers, and even their first Bowmans aren't, they're not valued like the shortstops or the center fielders. So you want to find a position player, usually shortstop, center field, infield is maybe even third base. I'd grade and sell right away. You want to sell when they get called up or right when the box is opened, right? During the release season, try to be first to market. Buddy of mine used to always buy them, send them in, do the quick, run through service with bulk, and then get back those cards first. Be first to market with them. You can usually take advantage of folks not wanting to buy the boxes and ripping them and able to just pick up a single. I used to be that guy buying a single too, because I didn't want to rip boxes and try to get the card. I just want to go find the single and buy it. I still think there's some play there. I think the Bowman Chrome market, there is some play. I believe that there's a longer it takes longer for these players to develop, so you have to wait a little bit longer. With basketball and football, there's a pretty quick turnaround. Pretty fast whether they're going to be somebody or not. And every new class that comes out, there's like all this hype around them, and so that Cade Cunningham, is he someone that still matters? Like, think about that. Even football, is Trevor Lawrence still sought after? Kind of. But you have to be pretty special to like maintain value, because these prices, they bake in, like with football and basketball, they bake in the success that the player is going to have. With prospects, what's interesting with baseball is that, and I guess you could say the same for basketball and football, but there's much less of a pool of players that are either drafted or even prospects. With baseball, there's so many prospects. There's the international draft. There's the Bowman draft product that has some of the college players and high school players that are drafted out of high school. And you have the Bowman Chrome, which has more of the international players. And there's just so many that you can choose from. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and he's like, what do I do? What do I look for with Bowman? I'm like, well, here's what you look for. The true colors, you want the autos, obviously. The refractors are still fine for base. Not base refractors, but just refractors without the autos. But those are the cards you seek. And the fun thing is, you never know. During Ronald Acuna's year, or even Fernando Tatis's year, their first Bowman year, other players were being sought after. They didn't pan out, but Fernando Tatis Jr. did, and he was in a White Sox uniform. in his first Bowman card. So there's like opportunities to snag somebody. I mean, when Trout was coming up, his card wasn't really sought after, right? There's that infamous video of a breaker pulling a gold refractor auto. And, okay, this is kind of cool. I don't know who Mike Trout is, putting it aside. Whereas, that's a huge card, right? But at the time they didn't know. That is what kind of gets the juices flowing for all of us with Bowman baseball. But my recommendation is, if you're buying, keep it minimal. Don't take too big of a risk, because man, you can buy a card that go from $3,000 to $200 quickly. And just like with football and basketball, after the first couple years, if these players don't produce, even Julio, his numbers are way down. If you don't produce, have you spent $5,000 on a card, or even $1,000 on a card, or $500 on a card? It could be $50 card before you know it. And so, if you're going to buy just to sell and try to get into that game, you want to buy, grade right away, and sell right away. Don't hang on to it. Sell when they get called up. Sell in the minute the product is released. Try to grade as quick as possible. To maximize your dollars on the autographs, you'd want to grade the autograph too. I noticed there's a bit of an uptick in value on a PSA 10 Auto 10 first Bowman auto card. So those are the things I would look for. What I would do. Again, I'm even a little shyer about that. I did a lot of that, and I got burned most of the time as well. So I'm a little gun shy. I have a couple left that I'm still hanging on to. But I remember buying a Luis Robert first Bowman Chrome Auto PSA 10, just the base for $1,000, and it was like selling up towards to $1,500 at one point. And I sold it right when it was coming back down and got out of it. I recently bought another one this offseason for like $500, but it was a PSA 10 refractor out of $499. And I've just sent that off to Probstein to sell, because I'm like, well, he's playing okay, not great, but the latest sale on that one was $300. So you can still lose there. I mean, I just kind of feel like it's a hit or miss, but it's the best time is the minute they come out and the minute they got called up. That's it. After that, you never know. You're taking a huge risk. You're going to have to do some pretty big things.
Yep. No, exactly. Well, since you've been talking, I've been doing a little research as well too. But so the prospect that we're talking about is Spencer Jones. He's an outfielder, currently in AA right now. I have heard of him. I'm sure most of the listeners have heard of him as well too. But the other thing I looked at as well too is you go to the Bowman Chrome set, and it just blows my mind how many different variations there are. I'm looking, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking of the writer's cramp these guys must get signing all these cards. There's refractors out of $499 and speckle out of $299 and purple out of $250 and Blu-ray wave out of $150. And the one he has is actually the HTA Choice Mojo, and that's out of $150. And so, then it goes on. 100 to 99 to 75 to 50 to 50 to 20. Right. I mean, it's insane the number of different parallels that they have in that product. So
I think, like anything else, you're going to find, as all of us hobbyists start kind of narrowing it down, you're going to go with what's the most sought after. What are the tribal knowledge kicks in, and people were going to go to what's always been. And the true colors are what you're always going to look for. Those colors I named off. I think you could throw green in there too. Black, but it really, I think it even drills down from there. I think gold, orange, and red, and blues are pretty popular. And if it's a color match for a team, say it's the Mets and it's an orange, that could be a pretty sweet deal there. If it's the Mariners are blue or Dodgers are blue, there's Astros and orange. There's opportunity there with the color match, but the golds are always going to be terrific. But those are always priced pretty high, and you just want to probably avoid those unless you're really into the player, and you're not afraid of getting hurt. But I think it's a get in, get out quick kind of situation, unless you're a player collector or it's your team that you support and you don't really care.
Yep. No, exactly. So I guess the last piece is my advice I gave him, because it was the Choice Mojo out of 150, and I looked at the autograph. The autograph wouldn't 10. I said, hey, just sell it raw and move on. Otherwise, you're taking a chance, because who knows when it's going to get back from PSA, and what if it comes back an 8 or a 9 or something like that? Then
PSA is pretty quick right now, though. I just don't think there's many people doing the flip thing. I really, I'd hedge your bets on sending it, because you have an opportunity to get so much more with a graded copy, because now it's way more liquid. People can flip it down the road. I feel like the turnaround's pretty good with PSA right now.
Yep.
I do.
Okay.
Just don't think there's as many people doing it.
Yep. Agree. All right. Well, good deal. Good conversation. So the next topic, I think it's one that I've heard listening to people, the last couple of weeks and things like that. It's been on my mind a little bit. Well, which do you think is more likely? We see all these flippers and things like that kind of migrate from one segment of the hobby to the next. 1 week 1 month it's 90s, and now they're in the 2000s, and then it's Prism Black Finites and that whole sort of thing. And I guess my question is, do you think we see more of a migration away from certain inserts and parallels first, or do you think we see a migration first from certain players? If you had to pick one, which one do you think?
I think it's players.
Okay.
I think because there's some pretty neat inserts. I have a pretty bold take, and maybe it has to do with how I feel about things right now. Everybody gives me a hard time about it, which is okay. It's fair. I can take it, but it's how I'm feeling, and being honest and transparent. I think it's players to start with. I just think there's like 5 players that are going to be worth anything down the road. I think they're generational players. You don't have 5 generational players. You have 1. There's Tom Brady, maybe Patrick Mahomes. There's Kobe, Michael. There's and people. I think we all these great Hall of Famers, and we had a comment in the last video. What about the all these different greats? And I'll be, there's lots of amazing players that are just terrific. From a sports standpoint, they're awesome. They're amazing human beings, amazing feats, like some of our favorite players. Does that translate into the card prices? Does that translate into, cards continuing to be worth more over time? I don't think so. I think there's a small number of players and cards that are going to be worth something later, and the rest of it will be just collectibles, which is what they are. It's what they are. And I think as our hobby shrinks, I don't think it's growing. I think it's shrinking. That concentration is going to focus in on from like, I don't want to use the word investment, but from like a store of value, cards that are going to slowly go. I think there's a small number. There's the artifactal ones that are like always going to be important, like Honest Wagner. But I think you're going to have just a certain amount of players, and there's certain cards that they have that will slowly grow over time. And then I think you're just going to have the rest of us collecting cards, just like that Corliss Williamson. That's a cool card for you. I would never buy that because it doesn't have any meaning for me, but it's a great card to collect. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to veer that direction and go, I'm just going to collect fun cards. I'm not going to spend all this money on them, though, because why? It needs to be something that if I spend this, it's never going to be, I'm never getting it back. I have to be okay with that. But I think that's going to be fine. And I think as a collector, you should be all right with that because you want to collect cards. And maybe that's a bold take or not a bold take, but I do think it'll shrink. And because of that, you're going to have less players that people are going to want to spend, and it all comes back to spending, a good amount of money, like obviously over $1,000 on a card. You gotta make sure that that's going to be a card that slowly increases in value over time. Unless it's a really, really important card for you to have for your collection, then I guess if you have the means for it, then yeah, you can do that. But if you're like, hey, I think this is going to be a good place to store the money. And again, I don't think a lot of us are having those conversations anymore. But if you look at some of the kind of money that's spent on some of these cards, people have to be thinking that. I don't think there's that many people in the world who go, I can drop, a massive amount of money on a card and go, yeah, it doesn't matter if it goes to zero. Guarantee you not. You spend $100 on a card, that's a different story. But yeah, that's my thought on that. I think the inserts, there's too many good inserts out there that have value that I think is going to last over time. There's a ton of them, like a ton of them. So apparently every single Michael Jordan one is getting an eye-catching sale from, we know Chris is running that. Okay, that's another thing I'm going to say. Chris, we know you're doing it. And I don't know if you watched the show or not, brother, but it is so obvious that you're running the eye-catching sale portion because it's like one after the other. Every single day there's a new one, and it's like, bro, we know it's you.
It's too funny.
Love it so much. You just want to make sure he keeps getting that love. But those are beautiful cards. I have to say, I'm not disagreeing with or complaining. It's fun to see them. Anyway,
Yeah.
rant over again.
Yeah, well, Chris at least threw a Manning in the other day to appease me. I think it was the Destination Honolulu PSA 9 rookie card. So at least he's giving Peyton some love.
He was thinking of his buddy Drake.
That's right. Yeah, so I agree with your take. I'll give you a slightly different opinion on what I think, and I think we touched on this last episode where I brought up the point about you go back and look at sales data from like cards in the 90s, and you're going, okay, if why is a credentials worth $60,000 now, and 10 years ago it was only worth 1,000, right? Like, what's been the migrate? Like, why? Like, what's caused that card of this retired player to all of a sudden go up in value so much? And then you go through and you'll see folks on Instagram posting these, eye-catching sales, for lack of a better term, of these almost like no-name players, but they're getting all this money from set collectors, or if it's flippers or dealers or whatever, who are buying up these cards because it's a credentials future, because it's a PMG, because it's a rubies, and not necessarily because of the player on the card. And then you kind of fast forward to the ultra modern stuff, and I've heard of multiple people who are getting DMs from folks saying, hey, sell me all your Prism Black Finites, sell me all of your Kaboom Golds, right? They don't care what player it is. They don't care about the player on the card. They just want the Kaboom Gold or Kaboom Green or Prism Black Finite or whatever. And so I just wonder how sustainable that is, where people are just buying that for the insert or the parallel it is, and not necessarily the player on the card. And then you've got the folks who are going out and winning an auction for a Prism Black Finite of some third string receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then they immediately repost it on eBay for like 3 times the price. And you've got these folks who maybe collect that player, and they're sitting there and they feel extremely held hostage by that person.
All right.
That's a whole different can you can go down. So
now we're moving into Drake's normal question and
that's right.
territory.
That's right.
He always finds a way to creep it into every.
No, for sure. Well,
you make a good point, though. You make a really good, valid point. Yeah.
Well, in this case, it's not me. It's not me. I've seen others on the periphery, and it's happening to them. And I think they're finally understanding my frustrating questions I ask on the crossover for the past couple of years.
I think the good news, Drake, for people like you and others that have that same sentiment and feeling, is that that's not going to last. As someone who went through it, I went and bought all those David Robinson. I shouldn't have done it. That was a big mistake. It was cool to own it and touch it and have it, and but that wasn't. It was a fool's errand. I should not have done it, and that was a big mistake for me. And I learned it's okay. It's nobody else's fault but mine. But I got caught up in it too. Like, I want to own a PMG, or I want to own one of these really cool cards. I still have a Griffey Credentials, Central Credentials, but it's a beautiful card. I love it. It's Griffey, and as much as everybody gives me a hard time about just collecting one or just being a Griffey guy, but that's a really cool card for him. It's a cool card for me, and I want to own it. But just because of the player, it's like if it's a Peyton Manning, you'd like, I want to own it because it's Peyton Manning. It's one of his better cards. And it is a popular set. Has it been built up and held up by a lot of other people? Maybe, possibly, probably. But it still is. And so, but there was somebody at some point that propped up the fact that you only need to buy these kinds of Bowman Chrome cards. These are the only refractors that matter, right? I mean, there's always some kind of a tribal thing that happens, and people kind of follow it, and it's like it becomes sort of the norm, right? What's the rookie card? What's the true rookie card? PSA 10 or BGS 9.5? Everything kind of changes over time. So I think that kind of happened, and I think what happened with a lot of those inserts, all those cards that were supposed to be important, people were starting to go, I need to buy Hall of Famers of those sets. Even like good players, but those particular players in those sets, they're not gonna reach the values of the MJs or the Kobes or the Tom Brady's. Tom Brady doesn't have any of those, but you know what I'm saying. Like those types of players, they might fetch those numbers, but you go get Eddie Jones, and it won't. The only reason Eddie Jones matters in some of those PMGs is because they're set collectors, and I think the set collectors are going to hold it up a little bit, but not to the amount that some of these people are thinking they're going to be. I think this is just my personal opinion. I think those numbers are going to way down because the set collectors are all going to get them, and then there's not going to be as many set collectors chasing them. And people like me and other people that thought, I just want to own it, are not going to want to spend that money anyway. So it'll all just come down. And I think it'll be a reasonable thing. And then you can go get your cards you want if you set collect or if you buy a certain card or collect a certain player. And I think those prices will all come down. And you can see I'm one of those people. I wasn't a trickle down on the David Robinson PMG Red. It sold for $3,000 less than what I bought it. I mean, it's exactly what. I mean, it is what it is, and that's probably the healthy thing. It's probably where it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be where I bought it, or maybe the person before me. That's fair. That's just the way it goes. And I learned my lesson, and hopefully others will too. And if you want to spend that kind of money on a card and don't care what happens to the value, then I guess go for it. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Like I said before, I think everything shrinks up. I even think Fanatics is going to slowly. Not back out, but just they're going to kind of read the tea leaves and I don't know, decrease their investment, so to speak.
For sure. All right, Dennis, anything else on your mind?
Yeah, I think we should start collecting Beanie Babies again. So I was thinking, just kidding. No, I know I probably sound pretty negative the past few episodes, but I think maybe I'm clearing my focus. I'm narrowing my focus more. And so that's probably coming through and how I feel about stuff. I'm also someone who, got burnt quite a bit, and that's sort of like instructing me in how I feel and think about a lot of stuff. But I'm also grateful for it too, because it's really got me focused on what I really want and what I want to chase. And if you think I'm not collecting cards anymore, buying them, I bought one today, but I'm collecting these really obscure, cool, raw, and I'm going to grade it. And I'm not too concerned about the grade because it's a cool, rare, numbered Griffey card from a weird set that doesn't even exist anymore. That kind of stuff has always kind of been exciting to me, and I found a lane where I don't have to spend a lot of money and still enjoy it. That's kind of where I'm at. But then I'm also buying those cards and knowing, hey, they may not go up in value, and that's okay because I really love the card and the way it looks, the shine, the hollow foil tack is so cool, and I'm like, my son and I would look at it and be like, let's go out in the sun and look at it. And to me, that's becoming more my enjoyment. But I think that's exactly where I think we should be as a hobby. I think that's where you should be. These Hulk Hogan cards, that rock cards are cool cards. Like, it shouldn't matter what they're worth. Those are like, he said, what is it? Riding Wild Brother or whatever. That's like
Running Wild Brother.
Running Wild Brother. He wrote that on a card. That's cool, man. Like, that's the stuff that's cool. Like, I'm kind of geared. I'm more of that. You're in that way. I don't know. How about you? How do you feel? I mean, we talked about this last time. I know you feel pretty positive about it. You're my yin to my yang, but
yeah, you know me. I mean, I'm excited, right? It's 3 months. 3 weeks until the National coming up. I was actually talking to Dave Marino. I don't know if you know him or not, but I was talking to him a little while ago, and he was telling me, he's helping to put on the National, and he was telling me that he's been to the IX Center a few times, and he goes, Drake, he goes, people are underestimating how awesome this National is going to be. He goes, I think it's going to be really, really good. He goes, Cleveland probably leaves a little bit to be desired as a city, but he goes, the layout of this place, everything that's going to be going on. He goes, I'm pumped. I'm excited. And the more people you talk to about that, I think it just increases the positivity, right? If you listen to content or you talk to people who are just, the sky's falling and everything's losing value and there's no collectors anymore, and that sort of thing, that can put you in a wrong headspace. So, you're most, what's the old saying? You're most alike the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, or whatever. So I think it's important to, surround yourself with positive people and like-minded folks who are, excited about the hobby and excited about, the future of sports cards in this space and things like that. So, yeah, I'm still fired up.
Well, I work in finance and in banking, and it's not a enjoyable time right now in an inverted yield environment and the rates being so high, but it's probably instructing a lot of my sentiment as well. But I'm still very vested in the hobby and excited about about my collection and what I'm doing, and yeah, and maybe the hearing about the National and everything coming back from that'll be invigorating. So far I only really listened to you and Dustin in the crossover guys anyway, so maybe I need to broaden my scope. But they're not negative, and you're not negative, so I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting it from.
There you go. Yeah. Well. So if I can, check out a new podcast that just started. It's called Precious Metal Gents. It's by Xanu Sports Cards and Prison Mike PC. Okay. And those guys really do a great job with 90s sets, and they talk about baseball, and it's a very educational and informative show. I think they're on episode 4 or 5 by the time this drops. So it's a relatively new podcast, but certainly would encourage you and encourage the folks that are listening to this as well. Check out the Precious Metal Gents podcast. It's an awesome listen.
Gents is in Gents, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Precious Metal Gents. Well, you heard there, team. I'm getting some great. I'm getting an option to go listen to something that'll probably get me excited about 90s cards, which I love anyway. Maybe that'll just kind of keep perking my interest in that stuff, and another departure from all the reporting I have to do here at work. But thank you for taking time to listen to us rant on and on about sports. Once again, you got Negative Nelly over here in DPZ, and you got the Positive Man, Mr. Sunshine, and Drake, and we're always in one. And we thank you for taking time to listen to us goofballs talk about cards. It's a blast either way. We still love doing it, and we have fun doing it together. And pretty soon, Drake's going to come back with some awesome experiences on the National. We'll dedicate one whole show, if not 2 whole shows to it, to start getting everybody excited about cards. Those of you that, like myself, who aren't going to be able to go, can kind of live through Drake. So maybe, Drake, you can take some videos and stuff like that we can share. We can do kind of a cool episode of your experiences. Maybe we'll do something fun like that. Make it all about experience at the National. That would be cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. And if you're going to the National, drop a note in the comments. We'd love to connect and meet up.
Let's do it. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend. If you're listening to this, so you've already enjoyed your 4th of July weekend. Hopefully it was a good one for you, and we hope you stay safe out there. And thank you once again for taking time to listen to us. Take care, everybody.
See you next time.